The sound of barking echoed down the perfectly manicured cul-de-sac as I stood in my front yard, flanked by my two service dogs, Titan and Hera. They sat like statues beside me, calm and alert, trained to read my breathing, my posture, the tension rising in my chest. Across the lawn, a crowd advanced. Not a mob. Not yet, but led by Camden Bishop, the HOA president in his crisp linen shirt and aviators. It had the energy of one. He walked like a man used to being obeyed. His polished shoes stopped just short of my property line. Those animals have no place here, he barked. This community has standards. I didn't flinch. Titan shifted slightly at the tone in Camden's voice, but stayed silent, poised. These dogs had saved lives in Kandahar. They weren't pets. They were warriors. And Camden? He had no idea who he was dealing with. They're federally protected service animals. I replied, steady. You might want to brush up on the Fair Housing Act. The faint flicker of confusion in his eyes was brief but satisfying. The neighbors behind him looked uncertain. I knew what stories they'd been fed about the unstable widow with combat dogs who moved into the smallest house in Silver Pines. They didn't know I was a retired military JAG lawyer and K9 unit trainer, or that my husband, Ethan, a decorated Green Beret, had died under mysterious circumstances in Afghanistan. All they saw was a woman they didn't understand. In a community that demanded conformity, Camden leaned in just enough to try to intimidate, but not enough to step onto my property. Coward. The board meeting is Thursday, he said with a smug smile. I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live. I smiled coldly. If you think my dogs are a problem, Camden, you haven't seen anything yet. The first violation notice came the next morning, $150 fine for improper lawn maintenance. My lawn was identical to every other yard on the block. I took photos, logged timestamps, and started a file. I knew a battle when I saw one. That afternoon, I found a little girl named Lila crying under the oak tree across the street. My dogs approached her without command, lowering themselves into a pressure therapy position, trained for soldiers with PTSD. Her mother came running, screaming, until she saw Lila touch Hera's fur and stop crying for the first time in months. That moment changed something. Lila's mother became my first ally. It wouldn't be the last. The next week brought more violations, noise complaints, parking citations for my own car in my own driveway. One night, I came home to find my front yard vandalized. The word "leave" scorched into the grass with herbicide. My security camera caught the culprit, Camden's right-hand man, Troy Wilkins. I made copies of the footage and kept it quiet. For now, Camden called an emergency HOA meeting, supposedly to discuss community safety. I sat quietly in the back. Camden gave his usual speech about property values and standards. Then he proposed a new regulation, no dogs over 30 pounds. It was obvious who the target was, but the room didn't react the way he expected. Some people looked uncomfortable. A few even glanced toward me. I stayed silent, taking note. Afterward, I approached Eleanor Briggs, a board member who hadn't spoken a word all night. I struck up a conversation about her roses. Beautiful, I said, though I'm not sure they're on the HOA-approved floral list. Her laugh was soft, nervous. My grandmother grew those. I don't care what the list says. There it was, a crack in the foundation. Over the next few weeks, I built a network. I learned who had been fined for minor infractions, who'd had decorations stolen after questioning board decisions. I found out Camden was hemorrhaging money and needed property values to remain sky-high. That's why I was a threat. My small house, my combat dogs, my noncompliance. I made the neighborhood look imperfect. Then came the pet festival, a community event meant to provoke my dogs into misbehavior. I knew it was a trap, but Titan and Hera were trained for war zones. I brought full documentation, recording devices, and ran the dogs through stress drills the night before. Sure enough, Camden had someone plant a high-frequency sonic emitter to agitate animals. Titan and Hera remained still. My footage showed Troy handing off the device, and the chaos it caused among other pets. I called him out on the spot. Camden tried to flip it, claimed my dogs were aggressive. But the neighbors weren't buying it anymore, especially when I pointed to the sonic device and accused him of animal cruelty. Camden escalated, filed for an emergency injunction to have me removed from the neighborhood. That was his mistake. In court, I brought Titan and Hera. Their behavior was flawless. I laid out the fair housing protections. Then I presented testimonies. Lila's mom, Mrs. Dillard, whose husband's memorial wreath had been deemed clutter. Mr. Cho, whose accessibility ramp had been denied. Camden's lies, manipulation, and harassment were exposed in front of the judge. The injunction was denied. But more than that, the judge ordered a full investigation into HOA practices. Then came the real twist. In digging through Camden's past, I discovered he'd been a logistics officer in Afghanistan. Same region, same year as Ethan's fatal mission. I cross-referenced timelines. Reports. The supply delay that got my husband killed? Camden had been the one in charge of those supply lines. He hadn't just tormented me in Silver Pines. He may have been responsible for Ethan's death. I brought it all to a community meeting. I didn't hold back. I played the audio, showed the financial documents tying Camden to embezzlement, then dropped the military files. Faces paled. Gasps filled the air. A retired medic confirmed the story. Eleanor Briggs stood up and denounced the board. The HOA collapsed in one night. Police escorted Camden out in cuffs. In the months that followed, we rebuilt Silver Pines. I was elected to the new board. We rewrote the bylaws, created transparency. Lila helped me train her own therapy dog. Titan and Hera became local legends. Camden was indicted for fraud and reinvestigated by the military. Turns out, he diverted supplies for personal profit, causing the deaths of multiple soldiers, including my husband. He was sentenced. Justice finally came. I visit Ethan's grave every year. I bring Titan and Hera. I tell him we did it. We made something good out of the pain. This neighborhood, these people, they're our family now. Sometimes, the battlefield isn't overseas. It's in a quiet neighborhood, against those who abuse power. But justice, when pursued with purpose, can bring peace where there was once only silence.